to tell you in advance what the take-home messages are. First, Metropolitan Manila and surrounding provinces are prone to earthquake hazards. Second, a magnitude 7.2 or even a magnitude 6.5 earthquake from the West Valley Fault can cause severe damage to Metropolitan Manila and vicinity. However, collectively, we can reduce the risk from earthquakes to save lives, property, assets, and businesses. What is the reality? The Philippines is prone to many natural hazards, including earthquakes, due to its geologic and geographic setting. We're part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, and we're prone to not only volcanic eruptions, but earthquakes and attendant hazards like tsunamis. The Philippines is really prone to destructive earthquakes. Shown to the left would be the earthquake occurrences of magnitudes 4 or greater from 1907 to 2012. And you would see that the whole archipelago, minus the province or the mainland of Palawan, would be dotted with colored circles, meaning except Palawan Island, the rest of the Philippine archipelago have been affected by strong ground shaking in the past and can be affected again in the future. In fact, 90 destructive earthquakes in the past 400 years have occurred. Shown to the right are pictures of what can happen in some of the destructive earthquakes, like strong shaking can cause collapse of buildings, and roads can be fissured due to liquefaction. Recently, there was a magnitude 7.2 earthquake in Bohol, and many of the old churches made up of limestones collapsed. In some parts of Bohol and even in the province of Cebu, some buildings collapsed as well. The question is, can a large earthquake or can large earthquakes affect Metro Manila and vicinity? What is the answer? The answer is a big yes. Why? If you look at churches, churches are not only historical buildings but also are retainers or would retain the memory of past disasters because it is the habit of very old churches to indicate when the building was constructed and when it was destroyed either by a fire or an earthquake. For example, the famous Roman Catholic Cathedral of Manila says that it was partially destroyed by the earthquake in 1600, destroyed by the earthquake of 1645, and destroyed by the earthquake of June 1863. On the other hand, some other churches, like the Church and Monastery of Guadalupe in Makati, says it withstood the earthquakes of 1645, 1658, 1754, and 1863, but the masonry roof of the church collapsed in the earthquake of 1880. The dates by itself would tell you that Metro Manila has been affected by many big earthquakes in the past, but from the two churches that I mentioned, some can be affected, some will not be. And it is because not of the foundation of the buildings, but also of the design, construction, and the workmanship, and the materials used for different buildings. The recent earthquake that devastated Metro Manila occurred way back in 1968, when a magnitude 6.3 earthquake occurred in Casiguran, Aurora, 200 plus kilometers north of Manila. Despite the fact that the fault that moved was so far away from Metro Manila, Ruby Tower was still affected and collapsed, killing 268 people and injuring 260. Meaning, a fault need not be just beside you for your building to be affected severely by a strong earthquake. The most important hazard for all earthquakes would be the strong ground shaking. Where are the earthquake generators surrounding Metro Manila? Shown on the map are names of the different faults on land, but the nearest fault in Metro Manila is actually at the eastern side, and it is the Valley Fault system composed of two traces, the West Valley Fault and the East Valley Fault. Other faults can also generate earthquakes that can severely damage some parts of Luzon, but not severely in Manila compared to the shaking of the Valley Fault system. What is the Valley Fault system? This is formerly known as the Marikina Valley Fault system, but shortened in name by FIVOX, to simply send a message to the Metro Manila people that the fault is not simply in Marikina, but everyone shares the fault. We are all fault finders, but the real fault on the ground is distributed in many communities. The longer the fault, the larger the magnitude it can generate. So the longer segment is the West Valley Fault, around 90 kilometers long. The East Valley Fault is shorter, 10 kilometers long. In Metro Manila, it transects the city's eastern side of Quezon City, western side of Marikina, western side of Pasig, eastern side of Makati, parts of Taguig, and Muntinlupa, but it runs from Bulacan down to Calamba.